So I decided that I needed to add in just a couple of other bits of information about creating a motif. And again, this is just based on this particular design, but I'm sure that this information could also be applicable to many other aspects of digitizing. And in particular, one of the things that I just wanted to make mention of about creating motifs and this particular design that I had made a little while ago in video number 1 is that I had made some other changes to my objects prior to beginning that other video. And what those changes are is that I had changed my stitch density. Now, if you look at my screen, I'm using a metric system here for digitizing, and my grid spacing is spaced at 5 millimeters. And so basically what you're seeing here is that this entire design is probably about, I don't know, maybe 22 or so millimeters wide, and a typical decorative stitch that you would be using on your embroidery, or not your embroidery machine, your sewing machine, excuse me, would be about 9 millimeters wide. That would be the standard for most of our more recent versions of sewing machines. So I am creating this design a little bit bigger than what it would be if it was stitched out on a sewing machine. And of course, it's going to be able to be enlarged or made smaller depending on the needs that I have in my how I'm going to be using this design. But like I said, I did adjust my stitch settings on here. So for example, on this turning angle satin fill that I've got right here, you're going to notice that I turned off auto spacing and I had turned on manual spacing, and I set my stitch density for about 0.45. And I did turn off the auto split function on this because I did want a smooth satin fill on here. I did the same thing for my petals. They're also set as a manual spacing at 0.45. And the reason that I like this setting is because it's a little bit looser in density. I don't like things to be too dense when I'm digitizing. I feel that that's hard on the fabric. It tends to just clump up when it's stitching, and so I usually like to do my manual spacing for a satin stitch at about 0.45. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. And again, on here I did turn off the auto split function because the size of the stitch was small enough. It's only measuring, I don't even know, let me turn on my measuring tool, and it really is only, I don't know, 3.7 millimeters wide. So, that's a pretty small stitch, and it does not need to be split unless there was some design reasons that I wanted them to be split. And then I could actually have used a carving tool or something to create that effect. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of was that when I was creating this as a motif, and I told you that I had put in this reference line, and I had put it here at the tips of my petals because I wanted it to begin and end stitching there. What a reference line is not only where the design, it's really not even about where the design begins and ends. What it is the line that you want, how the best way to describe it is to be digitized along. So if I were to move this down here just so that I can keep track of this particular reference line, and if I created a line up along the tops at the tips of these stitches, I'm going to come into my design settings, and under my backgrounds, under my guidelines, I'm going to change this to bright red so that I can see these things. And maybe that will help actually to see them a little bit better. Let me see, can I change something else? I want them, or I was hoping that I would be able to have the lines show as solid lines, but it looks like they're only going to show up as dotted lines. So they don't show up that much better, but you're going to see the difference. Let's turn off my grid just so that you can see this. So here are my guidelines that I have inserted into my design. And this time when I create this motif, I'm going to call it a slightly different name to distinguish it from the first one. But this time I am going to select all of the objects. I am going to come over into my Advanced Digitizing. I'm going to create a motif. Once again, it's going to still stay in my Designs folder. This time I'm going to call it It was called D4 before, remember that? And this time I'm going to call it D4 with a dash, and I'm going to call it 2. That's just to distinguish it from the first one. And I'm going to say, okay, this time when I enter my start point of my reference line and my end point of my reference line, I'm going to have it down here at the base of this motif, rather than last time I had it kind of up here toward the top of the motif. So I'm going to select this as my starting reference point. This one here is my ending reference point. This has been created into my designs, and I'm going to say, okay, click off of it. Let's zoom out a little. Let's create a motif line using D4-2. This time when I create my digitized line, I'm going to again use an open line, and I'm going to create my somewhat curvy line again. This time you're going to notice that see this here, this line here, which I had not pointed out to you in the first video, this is the reference line. So all of my designs this time are going to be wiggling or moving along that reference line here. So if I reshape them, that's where they're going to be digitized along as that bottom line. So again, just another way that you can also be configuring your motifs to work with whatever it is that you're planning to use them for. You know, sometimes when we're creating a motif, we might want, let's just say that we are using this design along the edge of, I don't know, something that you have created. And this might be a more logical place for you to have your reference line rather than at the midpoint of your design or the top of your design or whatever it may be. So this time when I create a rectangle, square shape, drawing along it once again, you're going to see that this is my reference line. I wish I had my other design open. So let's say there's that one. This time let's select D2. Where is that one at? D4. That was the original one. Okay, and I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to create a rectangle square, and I'm going to digitize it. Click it. See where the reference line is at? Up here at the top. This is this black line that you see here, and that was the reference line for the original D4 design. And the one that's up here is the one where the reference line is at the second time. So I don't want to tell you one way is better than the other, but just different ways that you can also accomplish different ways of using your motifs. Okay, so that was all I wanted to add on to you about making motifs. Thanks for watching this video.